right, we will call to order the Kingston Springs Board of Commission special called meeting for October 6th. Would everyone please rise and face the flag? Sorry to make you sit down again. Get back to your It's all right. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you can sit back. All right. John, could you please call the roll?
Carolyn Clark.
Here.
Tony Gross.
Here.
Mike Hargis.
Here.
Lynn Remick is absent. Todd Beerhofer.
Here. All right, we have a quorum. Do we have a motion to approve the September 21st public hearing meeting minutes?
Motion approved. Second.
All in favor? All right. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the September 21st City Commission meeting minutes?
I've got a
Change.
change. On number D, our motion to approve resolution 23013 encouraging and supporting improvements on State Route 249. I thought we had ended it with saying that we would do this repeated, or renew it either annually, or I don't know if we decide on the date certain, but we would look to renew this every 3 years, 5 years, or annually.
We did discuss doing it on a regular basis.
thought that should
So,
be
yeah,
good.
just add it as a note so we remember.
Annually then?
We could.
Okay. I'll add that as
Anything
note.
does it?
Thank you.
Okay, do we have a motion now to approve it amended with amendments?
Motion to approve as amended. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, and do we have a motion to approve the October 6th special called meeting agenda?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes. Community input and concern, Mr. Sanders, I believe you have,
Just a comment, Bob Sanders, 225 Woodlands Drive, Kingston Springs. I see on the discussion here tonight, I'd just like to tell you that I'd like to see, as far as the community is concerned, I think we need to clean up Harpeth Trail and do that project. If we got to do one or the other, I think that one should be done before Marylog, because it's a mess when that water freezes below that asphalt. It's going to be a bigger problem. And I rode both streets, and it's a little rough on Marylog, but it's not near as bad as what could happen. And that's all I got. I just think if we only got money for one, it should go that way. Thank you.
all right, thank you. All right, we have no unfinished business, so we can move on to new business. And item A is discussion, decision on bid selection for TDOT pin 126657 Harpeth Trail Neighborhood Connector TAP grant.
You'll remember that this was a discussion at our September board meeting with a request to obtain some additional information to TDOT for the board to make a informed decision on this project. So just to recap really quick, this project is phase 2 of what we call the Harpeth Trail Connector. So it goes from Cedar Court up to Woodlands, down Woodlands, or across Woodlands, connecting back to East Kingston Springs Road to make a full loop of sidewalk around that neighborhood. And to quickly recap, the project was recently bid for construction. The sole bid was received from Adams Contracting for a total of $1,482,819.50. If TDOT's open to fully funding that project, which we don't have it's not fully funded now. If they are open to fully funding that project at the current bid, the local share would be 20% of that, since it's a TAP grant, which would be roughly $296,600 for the town. So between our last meeting and tonight, I've had conversations with Neil Hansen, who is TDOT Transportation Manager and TAP grant coordinator, to get a couple of questions that the board had asked answered. And this is the information he provided. If the town opted to pursue the TAP grant, which is phase 2, what would be required for the terminus at phase 1? So if we chose not to pursue phase 2, part of phase 2 was connecting the sidewalk to make a complete loop. If you don't choose to opt for phase 2, then phase 1 stops at the intersection of Cedar Court and Harpeth Trail. TDOT has a requirement for a terminus at any sidewalk. It can't just stop in the middle of nowhere. So their terminus includes things like the entrance to a park or a trailhead or a transportation stop or something of that nature. There's really nothing back there. So there was a concern that if we did not do phase 2, then what would we do at the intersection of Harborview Trail and Cedar Court as a terminus for phase 1? From talking with Mr. Hanson, he's indicated that if the town doesn't want to continue to move forward with the TAP grant at the moment, but would plan to reapply for a grant to continue phase 2 of this project and complete the Harborview Trail corridor sidewalk loop in the near future, an email from the mayor indicating such would be sufficient for TDOT to waive their terminus requirement. The indication of a desire to continue the sidewalk at some point would be enough for TDOT to determine that a terminus was not needed at that intersection, since the sidewalk would make that terminus unnecessary eventually. The second question was, if the town opted to move forward with the project, would additional TAP grant funding be available from TDOT to help cover that cost? His response, as it was in the past, indicated that TDOT would like to see the project continue. However, their TAP grant funding has been fully allocated at this particular juncture, so he was not able to confirm if any additional funding would be available for the town. So we'd like for the project to continue. There might be some money, we don't know. So there's really not an answer there. The third thing was that, and this is more out of my curiosity as anything else, that if the town opted not to move forward with the project, would this be some sort of detriment to the town in the future in receiving future TDOT funding? And Mr. Hanson indicated that with the difference in the funding from the initial project to the final construction bid that was received, the difference in those two amounts was so vast that it would be understandable if the town opted not to pursue the project at this point, and it would not impact future grant decisions from TDOT should the town choose to move forward with other TDOT grants in the future. So basically, for putting a fine point on it, it wouldn't put a black mark on the town regarding future TDOT grants if we chose not to move forward.
So when's the fiscal year end? Is it just started and they're out of funds?
The funds are usually allocated before the fiscal year starts, yes. So all the funding that they had, similar to us, that they'll look for their budget and say, we've got all these projects, how much are we going to need to fund these projects once the fiscal year starts? So that's what he means by allocated.
So when would the new fiscal year start? Next July 1?
Yes.
Next year?
Yes.
And we'd have to get in line with everybody else to have access to any of those
yes.
grants?
Yes. The only difference would be if other municipalities similar to us that for one reason or another were allocated TAP grant funding, they decided not to pursue their project, and that TAP grant funding would go back into the bucket, and then TDOT would then distribute it to whatever other projects that they might have need for.
So how do we stay in line? Or do we?
We don't.
So if we say we're not going to pay $1 million extra, which is about what it is, then we start all over again?
That's a yes or a no. So right now, if you'll remember, the TAP grant was 100% funding from the town up to construction. So that was a contract with Kimley Horn, who's the engineer on this project. They did the engineering for the project, the administration of the grant. They did everything from all the different phases up to construction, including the NEPA, environmental, all that kind of stuff. So they took care of that. We've pretty much settled with them. It's $105,000 that we did for Kimley Horn. And then from construction forward, it's an 80-20 split with TAP. I say that's a yes or no question, as in speaking with Kimley Horn and in speaking with Mr. Hanson, that the work that Kimley Horn has done is not necessarily, if the town decides not to pursue this project, it doesn't necessarily go in the trash. It does go on the shelf. If we as in the town opted in the next couple of years to pursue this project again, to complete this loop, the information that Kimley Horn has done could be pulled off the shelf, basically dusted off, updated. Engineering's not going to change all that much because topography, the landscape's not going to change. The NEPA information, all the environmental stuff is good for, it's either 5 to 7 years after it's completed, so all of that would not need to be redone. So all of that doesn't just get wasted. we could pull that off the shelf in the future should we choose to move forward with this project if we don't move forward with it now.
So here's my thought, and ever since you first told me this was happening in our last meeting, and then once we've gotten these responses, the way I've been thinking about this personally is we've got the option to at least pursue additional funding for this TAP grant right now. And that's going to put us in that 80-20 split, obviously, still. So we're going to still have to pay that 20%, which comes out to nearly $300,000. But the other options are to try to kick the can down the road even longer and say we're going to get back to this and we're going to reapply for the grant, which we may end up having to do no matter what, because we may not get additional funds, but there's a possibility for additional funds. I think we should take the opportunity to do it, because while we've already got this project halfway done, essentially, we might as well at least see if we can't get that funding now, because these are never going to get cheaper. We know that from this experience, obviously, over the past 5 years. We know that these came in higher, above budget than we expected, and that's only going to go up and up and up and up. So right now, I think we don't really have a whole lot to lose by asking for additional funds to complete this project now. If we don't get them, then we're kind of stuck back in that same situation of having to reapply and whatever, we could possibly do that. But I don't see any real downside for us to at least attempt.
So can we move forward in assumption we're looking for additional funds, but then we find out we're not going to get additional funds? Then if we pump the brakes on it, are we still out the 300,000 and whatever?
And the 100?
No.
And the 100?
Well, we would be out the 100,000. Well, we wouldn't be out the 300,000 necessarily, because we wouldn't be completing the project at that point. We would just be reapplying for
We don't have
another
to pay it
TAP
up front.
grant to try to do it again. And our engineering would still be good. What I'm saying is, in the event that another town like us decides they're not going to do the project and they have TAP grant funding, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be the ones to get said TAP grant funding.
Well, yeah, I don't mind obligating to the 20% as long as it covers the entire cost, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think I could support
It would be based on this bid.
paying an additional $1 million over what
That's
that is. Actually, even more than that. It's 1.6, and we have to pay 20% of the 600, right?
We have to pay 20%, well,
Yeah, the whole cost.
Of the whole
yes.
cost.
Yeah, so
Yes.
what I'm saying is, they gave us 600, we'd have to pay 20% of that anyhow,
Yes.
all right? If we just said, we're gonna build a piece of sidewalk, that's 600 grand long. So I don't see anything wrong with saying, yeah, we wanna fund it, because we wanted to fund it when we asked for it, you
Yeah.
know? The only other question I got, John, is, you mentioned at the last meeting that the TDOT or whoever is going to look at the bid to see if we're being gouged over the pricing of
Yes,
the concrete and materials and labor and everything else. What was the result of that review?
They have not reviewed that yet. TDOT is behind. So anything that does go through TDOT is going to take several weeks to get confirmation. I will say, though, that the items that were highlighted, there were probably 6 or 7 that the engineering firm highlighted as in the cost seemed to be a little absorbent on that. If those items were even cut in half, you were probably looking at, I don't remember right off the top of my head, but probably a couple of $100,000 at most. So you're still looking at $1.3 million for the sidewalk. And just to clarify too, that if the board chooses to move forward, then we would have the single bid from Adams. So we would then, the board would need to accept that bid. And then right now allocated from TDOT, we have somewhere north of $600,000 that we would be at 20% off. Anything above that $600,000 the town would be responsible for at this moment until additional funding could be granted from TDOT. So
that changes things a little bit.
Yeah.
That actually does make it very problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So
can't support
we're,
that.
yeah, 20% of 600,000, and then above that, so we're actually out, we're about $1 million run line for.
that's what it, yes, that would what the loan would need to be for moving forward, with the hopes that we would get additional funding from TDOT for some of that.
So there's no way to know if we get additional funding before moving forward.
I
Wasn't that
doubt
talking about
it.
you sending a letter?
well, it's a request of a letter from the mayor if this board decides to move forward, so, yeah.
Or not.
No, not
If we want to stop.
Or
right
not
there.
move forward, yeah.
If we decide we're gonna stop here because we don't wanna pay the extra $1 million or $1.6 million bid, but we bid out $1.2 million if we accepted what we got.
So there are a couple of options.
But if we don't do that, then all you have to do is send a letter saying that we plan to do it in the future and a terminus is not
Well,
required.
yeah, it also required a letter if we chose to ask for more funding too. It was both
Yeah,
ways. So.
okay.
So there are a couple of options. We have 60 days from bid opening before we need to make a decision. My calculations is our meeting is on the 19th of October. I believe the 20th of October marks 60 days for that bid. So we could try to get additional information and additional confirmation from Mr. Hansen that yes, we will fund this project should the town decide to move forward with it between now and the 19th.
The 19th of November?
No, the 19th.
Yeah, this one,
This
19th.
month.
Okay.
Right, so that's 2 more weeks. I don't know. I won't know until Mr. Hansen gives kind of response as to whether he is open to providing that information or not. So that is one option. Another option is to go ahead and decline this bid and have the project rebid. The downside of that is we bid it the first time and we received 0 bids. We bid it this time and we received this bid from Adams. We did the Safe Routes to School project. We bid it the third time. That's pretty big on that. So
Who did the first phase? Same company?
Adams.
yes, Adams contract.
What would be the odds of Adams rebidding it? I mean, I don't know if they, I know the situation we're in and all that. Just curious. I mean, I know typically
Yeah,
people don't, if you reject a bid, they don't rebid it. But I mean, there's a reason why we would like, I just would like a little more, I would like to know from the state of Tennessee, from TDOT, because if there's a way for us to get the additional funding, then that would be, I think, the optimal situation for us at this point. But I don't want to, commit the town to that much extra debt on a gamble that we might get some extra funding, is basically what it comes to.
Well, plus every change order, right?
Yeah,
Because it's funded at, the 80/20.
Yeah.
but The change orders aren't funded at 80/20.
they aren't. But
They're 100% the town.
I will
We've got
say
to-
Adams did pretty decent on this last one. There was a change order, but there's a different engineer on that one.
Yeah.
And I think that they worked a little better with Kimley Horn.
Yes, they have much better.
So I think that those numbers with the engineers are gonna line up a little better than they did maybe with Collier.
There was the change
So
order.
what does that mean? It won't be 1.6, it'll be 1.4? Is that what you mean? Or?
No, I'm just saying that I don't know that there'll be as many change orders that occur because.
After the project starts?
After the project starts,
Oh, I
because of
see.
because of the engineers on this project versus the first phase of the project.
Urban Hills, and they had us alive with those, they kept coming change order, change order, more money, more money, more money.
Yeah.
And we had that was on us, so that's the other fear. If it's $1 million out plus change orders, then,
I think to Tony's point though, about not kicking the can down the road and considering going forward, I pulled the old options when we first voted on this, and the full circumference that went all the way, Harpeth View Trail, all the way to East Kingston Springs and down, that bid, however, was 2 years ago, was $1,299,000.
Yeah.
So now we're looking at 1.4, so I think the prices are not gonna go down. I mean, that's amazing, we could have done the whole thing for 1.29, but I'm sure it would have been up to
Yeah, it would be
2.1 million by now.
Yeah, it'd be well over
Yeah.
probably by
Yeah.
now.
So I just think the prices are just gonna go up, and I think just have a sidewalk to nowhere, just ending, I just think aesthetically and practically, for the reasons we're doing it, we just,
And we essentially still have to commit the town to doing it at some point in the future.
yeah. And at some
that's
point, it's
going
so
to be in the
nebulous.
future where it's going to be more expensive. That's why I would, if we can find a way to at least get some more information or like get in a spot where we have, I don't know.
Well, I don't mind asking for more
Yeah.
financial support from them, because we got up until the 19th to do that. I got no problem with that. But I can't support us biting the whole thing off and borrowing the money and bonds to do that. That doesn't make any sense. we'd be looking at, well, they're gonna take 400 of it, we're gonna take the rest,
Yeah.
right, basically.
Yes, sir.
So out of 1.6 million, we have to borrow 1.2 million to connect that sidewalk down that hill. You know, I don't see how the city can responsibly do that
Then
financially.
what's the answer 5 years from now?
Well, I don't know, Carolyn, I don't know what the answer is, but, you know, things are pretty inflated right now, and that could change. And it sounds like that, you know, if the state says, yeah, we can come up with some more money, the question is how much?
It would be, I believe, it would be the 80-20 match, correct?
It would, whatever the increase it
Yeah.
would be, but will they increase it all the way to the bid amount? That's the question. Because finding some extra money isn't helping our problem a heck of a lot. You know, they say, well, yeah, we can do 800, well, we still end up with $1 million of debt on that short stretch of road sidewalk that goes down. And it doesn't go nowhere, it goes from the middle of the subdivision down to the schools. So if a kid wanna walk up the hill to get to that thing, or walk down the hill to get to it, it still goes to the school. It goes down to the middle school and the high school. So it's not without purpose if you don't connect it. Now, is it smart to connect it? Yeah, it is. But it is smart to connect it and us pay 80% of the bill. That doesn't make any sense.
Are there any additional grants available? Not for that?
To my knowledge.
Well, John, what can you, I mean, I just really, if we can make a push between now and I guess the board meeting to find out what we can get.
Then if the board chooses to do that, then if we then would motion to defer this.
And do you need me to do
selection.
anything in this process or whatever? I don't know. I mean, whatever we need to do to get it, but I would love to be able to move forward with it, but I would really like some confirmation.
I've had a couple of discussions with Mr. Hanson, and he's, you know, given me the answer that he's given me. So
Yeah.
I think any kind of additional, of course, we'll contact him again and explain the situation, but
Yeah.
if there's anybody else that can contact anyone that maybe is in a familiar spot with Mr. Hanson, that would be helpful.
What about our state representative?
Yes,
Why wouldn't we contact her and ask her to
yes.
push TDOT a little bit here to see if there are other folks that are sitting here in limbo because their bids came in way over the TAP grant estimate?
And I do believe that's a fairly common occurrence these days, so yes, we'll speak with Ms. Littleton and Mr. Roberts as well.
All right, I think that's probably the best thing we can do at this point.
Then I make a motion that we defer it until the next board meeting, until the deadline of the 19th, whichever one comes first.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed? All right. Let's move on to item B, is a discussion of 2023-24 paving schedule, a portion of Harpeth View Trail versus Mary Log Lane, and a portion of Mount Pleasant Road.
So this topic's kind of been tethered to the Harpeth View Trail Phase 2 TAP grant discussion that we just had. At our September meeting, the board asked for ideas on estimates for these two projects, the portion of Harpeth View Trail from East Kingston Springs Road to Cedar Court, and for resurfacing Mary Log, and then from Mary Log on Mount Pleasant, from Mary Log down to, which would be, I guess, South Main Street down here. So spoke to our friends at Kinley Horn, and they were able to give some estimates based on data that they had recently had from paving projects and other places. The data that we received from them, Harpeth View Trail from East Kingston Springs Road to Cedar Court, for resurfacing that road, approximately $354,000. And Mary Log Lane, and then north from Mary Log along Mount Pleasant to Main Street, approximately $489,000. These are very, very rough estimates. They're based just on proprietary data, not proprietary, but empirical data, I guess, that Kinley Horn had from recent paving projects, really just based on linear feet. And a couple of pictures that I sent them and explanations over the phone about the grade and anything that might be encountered. I do believe that these costs, at least for Mount Pleasant and Mary Log, might be shy because of especially the scope of what will need to take place on the bottom end of Mount Pleasant over here, because there'll need to be some additional work done on there. Also, the bids do not include engineering, which would probably be another 7-10% on top of these things. So,
How much budget money do we have for that, John?
we have currently budgeted $241,000 in annual paving, and then another $94,853 in state street aid, which is basically used for paving or sidewalks or whatever we need it for a grand total of $335,853 for paving. We have another $45,000 in repair and maintenance, but that's road patch for potholes and whatnots.
So if we decide to switch the priority, the order of paving, and we could fully cover the project in the Woodlands, but we couldn't fully cover the one on Marilog and down to the city, down to Main Street.
We couldn't fully cover it. We'd be much, much closer to covering the Harborview Trail than we would the other.
Well, I've gone to look at Harborview Trail, and it's it needs to be done right away. It's the level of pavement is 2 inches short of a curbing start. So the water is not going to roll over that until it gets 2 inches higher than just sheet drainage.
And that was done on purpose.
And everybody's driveway has got that rock strip in front of it, so they're not tied in properly. I mean, you're asking for trouble there. I mean, to me, that's a bigger mess than either Marilog or Mount Pleasant.
Is part of the contract with the safe routes for the sidewalks, is part of that fixing those driveways of people that were?
No, paving of Harborview Trail was not included in the project scope of Safe Routes to School. And the curb and gutter was designed to work with the crown of the road, eventually for that road to be resurfaced. So when it is resurfaced, it will have a nice flush to that.
That's kind of what I'm talking about. That's why it needs to happen before we have a long time lapse, because you're going to end up doing more damage to the road if we don't do it before we can get around to paving it. Anyhow.
Or to Mr. Sanders' point, the water gets under that concrete if we don't pave it.
Yeah.
Before we get water freezing.
Right.
Plus our new
Then we got
gutters.
Yeah, we got
Or the other
busted
way is,
gutters.
popping up the pavement.
Is there any consideration to, I know Tony, you had mentioned it last meeting about possibly increasing the line item, because I think what we have appropriated for the annual paving is kind of like 2010 funds, 240,000.
Not enough.
That's not 2023 funding. If we could increase that line item and just, I didn't know if it was consideration if we could possibly do 2 projects in a year, since we did not do any paving last year.
Well, we saved up 2 years, Carolyn, to be able to do one. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
whole
I know, which I
idea.
mean gets to the point that we probably need to start appropriating more funds, unfortunately, for paving.
Well, maybe, but, the other part of that is, those funds don't come from thin air, they come from tax revenue, so.
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted to finish my point that I was going to make, is that on the case for Marilog, I know that Mount Pleasant has been waiting like 2 years for this. I know it got staved off for the parking lot. It didn't get done last year, and now it's looking to get pushed again. And I know the part between Old Barn Trace and downtown is kind of the same as Old Brush Creek was. It's getting so torn up, and the ice is going to get under that, and they patch and they patch and they patch those potholes on there. And then on Marilog, I was counting up, I think Harborview Trail has 68 homes on it, and you consider all of since Marilog is kind of an inter-county arterial, people use it to go to Williamson County, or Sheds use it, and adding up Old Barn Trace, Mount Pleasant, Timber Ridge, Matthew, Cole, Sims, Ridgecrest, Luann, Blackburn, Fire Tower, Anna Rebecca, Terry Lane, and Cutter's Cove, it's 275 households that have to go down Marilog to get to the store, to get to Lawrence, to get to the dentist, to get onto the interstate. So that's a lot of traffic on Marilog. And that's not counting
Well, it
the
is,
mail,
but
the
there's
school
more
buses,
traffic,
the
Carol.
delivery, the Amazon, FedEx, UPS.
there's more traffic on Harbor View Trail than just the homes that line the street.
Oh, I realize that,
Because
but,
they're coming down out of that hill, and most of them are coming down that road that we tore up to fix the sidewalk. Now they may not live right on that, but they got to drive over it. So I hear your point. I know there's a lot of traffic there, but you know, I go up and down Mary Log all the time, and it's not in bad shape. Now, does it need to be resurfaced? Sure it does. But it can wait more, in my view, and looking at the condition of the road, it can wait more successfully than we can wait on the Woodlands, when we're the ones that paid for the sidewalk to go in there, and we did the damage to the road, and the road needs to be fixed.
The main problem with Mary Log is actually not so much the road itself, it's the bottom of the road.
Yeah.
Where the water pools when it rains.
Yeah.
Right.
And that becomes kind of hazardous on Kingston Springs Road, which is a problem, and that's, of course, that's gonna add more cost to whatever we do there, because I mean, that whole culvert work and everything is gonna be there.
And you're
soon.
already $100 grand more on that project if you do both sides at the same time. Now, Carol may have a good point. You may want to do Marilog before you do Mount Pleasant connector down to the city. 'Cause that one doesn't appear to get as much traffic, at least to me, but.
I think Todd, though, is one who had the good idea of tying those two together. That made a lot of sense when he brought that up.
Yeah, the reason I did is just because
Yeah.
if they're already there paving, to
Exactly.
make two
Then they'd be
trips for
doing
two
it at the
separate
same
projects
time,
is
yeah.
more expensive than one. Give it
Right.
to them. But still, if we don't have the money.
Well, that's the problem. If you went ahead and did the whole thing, instead of just doing it where we damaged the road, then how much more is the cost going to be for that? Because the estimate you're talking about, the rough estimate is just from where we laid the sidewalk, right?
Correct, from
Yeah.
East
So
Kingston Springs Road to Cedar
you
Point.
didn't calculate going ahead and paving the whole thing.
That's it.
But then you're looking at borrowed money again, and I don't think that's a wise move.
Well, what's the will of the board? I mean, we've got some projects, we gotta fix some of these things, obviously. I think that we do have to, like, when we look at the budget this year, that we really do have to look at paving and, I mean, regardless of what you know, I mean, I realize it's more money, and money doesn't come, it's taxpayer dollars, but we have to maintain our infrastructure. So, like, you know, that's the same. And when you put things off over longer periods of time, then they become more expensive to fix. You know, I remember, I can't remember what it was. I was at one of the Power of 10 conferences, and it was the Bureau of, I can't remember what state. I think it was like one of the western states, and he was the head of their equivalent of TDOT. He said, you know, the worst thing you can do to roads is let them deteriorate, because you think they're expensive to fix now, they're really expensive when that happens. So, you know, it magnifies the cost by a lot. So we do need to find some way to fund more paving in this town. I mean,
I don't know how you do that unless you cut something else. I mean, there's
Yeah.
the point. You know, you've had a little growth in, especially the sales tax portion. You know, I don't think we could just willy-nilly just say, well, we're gonna go borrow another $1 million or $2 million and go ahead and do it now. Just because it might save us something, you still got the cost of the bond. The interest rate on the bond is pretty
yeah, I
significant.
wasn't recommending that. I was recommending a budget change.
Okay, well, I don't mind
I mean,
considering that.
allocating funds in a way that puts more emphasis on our on maintaining our infrastructure.
Right, right.
Because if we don't continue with the sidewalk portion for now, what amount does that free up for us to possibly pave?
Well, it doesn't really free up anything. It just means that
Yeah.
$100,000 we spent, we're gonna put on the shelf and gather
Yeah.
dust until we feel like that we get the full tap grant to cover the entire cost. Looks to me like.
Yeah.
Right, we've not budgeted anything specifically for that TAP grant project yet.
I was going to bring this up in support of adding more money to the line item for paving too. I found this from 2015 report that you're probably familiar with. In 2011, Mount Pleasant Road was done at .94,
Mm-hmm.
plus Moore Circle was done, 0.19 miles. Lubin Hills was done, 0.37 miles. Hillcrest was done, 0.68. Marylog was done, 0.31. It added up to 13,147 linear feet. 215,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's
So-
just insane, you know, like now
Yeah.
we're looking at, you know, double those prices,
Yeah.
so. I mean, even the sidewalks, you know, when you look at the sidewalks, I mean, when we looked at those projects initially versus what the cost is now, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, you know, it's night and day.
Everything's so expensive.
About triple.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if we're looking for a motion from the board, I would make a motion that we proceed with repaving the road on, in the Woodlands. Flush it up to the drainage system so that it works properly. And taking a look at the budget next year to see how we can allocate more money to paving projects or infrastructure.
And I mean, I kind of lean that way just because that road is a mess and we know what the repair costs are gonna be. They estimated repair costs were
$60,000.
$60,000, which, that would just be literally throwing money away.
That's an estimate, that's not the bid.
Yeah, that would be, and that would just be throwing money away at that point.
Right.
It's not gonna,
Not gonna solve the problem.
Is there any way we can look at finishing, you know, this road as is, going to Upper View Trail, but not waiting till next fiscal year to amend the budget and get more money in paving? That's
yeah, I mean, I think we could
consideration.
certainly look at that. And then, you know, and then I would say if we were looking at another road, then I would say probably move on to Marylog and handle that situation. And that, personally, I think, I mean, I drive that way down there because I don't like to go down Marylog because everybody goes up and down Marylog, but by the same token, everybody goes up and down Marylog. So, and then of course we have the water issue at the bottom of Marylog. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen there. So I think that has to be the next priority.
Well, I think the water issue is probably a higher priority than paving it. I mean, you know, you're gonna have to tear the road up to fix the culvert,
Yeah.
to make sure the water's going under there properly. And that part has to be done before you can pave it anyway.
You know,
So, I mean, if you're gonna allocate some more money for something for infrastructure protection, then that's the spot to start. It's not to,
We already
try to
have,
do it all together. You know, you could separate those two pieces.
we already have Marylog Culvert in our CIP.
yeah.
And there should be, I'm not sure how much it is, but there's some in the current budget to replace that culvert.
Right.
It's been on our radar, it's
Yes.
just a matter of finding the.
Getting it out.
Well, what we need is a bid on it to see if what we got is anywhere close to what the actual cost is.
We have to find the culvert first. That's what we're trying to get.
Okay, all right.
Supply chain issues. I mean, oddly enough, that's the truth. We've been waiting for a culvert to come in for 6-8 months.
Have we ordered one?
Yes. Well, we've ordered as in not committed and purchased, but.
Saying we want one this big and
Yes,
they don't
we're on
have
the
one this
culvert
big.
list.
Okay, I got you.
What
Yeah.
the wait
All right.
list of culverts.
Well, we can cross that bridge when we get to it, but
Right.
as far as the motion tonight, what I'm saying is I think we ought to go ahead and pave the Woodlands.
We have a motion to pave that portion of Purpose View Trail. Do we have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, and that kind of makes item C a moot point.
Almost.
Oh.
It does make it a moot point, but we do have a proposal on the table, so the board would need to choose if they so desire to reject that proposal.
I make a motion to reject the proposal.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, item D is motion to approve change order 4 request from TDOT PIN number 123630 for State Route 249 multimodal project.
So this is a change order on the multimodal project, which is Lumen Hills Road. A conference call this a week ago Friday, a week ago today, with the engineer and the contractor. Thought it was best to bring this change order before the board before they approached TDOT with this. However, in additional conversations between the contractor and the engineer at the first of this week, there are quantities of concrete, not asphalt, but quantities of concrete that have changed in the price of that quantity, which they feel TDOT would need to approve prior to the board approving. So they both opted of the decision to run this change order through TDOT first and the board second. The reasoning behind that is if the board approved X amount of dollars today, and TDOT came through and in the off chance said, no, it actually needs to be $20 per yard rather than $18 per yard, then it would need to come back before the board because that price would change. So the contractor and the engineer feel that they will have at least feedback from TDOT on their approval of that change order before our 19th meeting. So staff would recommend that we defer this change order.
How much is the change order, Joe?
We don't know.
You don't know what it is?
No, sir. I've not seen it.
Well, then I vote we just defer it.
Yeah.
Don't know what it is.
And on top of that, they asked to get run through TDOT anyway, so.
That's an easy one.
So I guess eventually.
Easy now, probably not later.
Is it, the engineering company is who?
Collier.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So this is after the fact, they're saying the concrete cost was different than what they did?
There's an additional piece of work that needs to be done. It's, if you're looking at Thornton's, to the right side of the right Thornton's driveway that goes across, I think that used to be the Wiley's property,
Yeah.
to the interstate. There's some additional stormwater drainage that needs to be done. So there's additional quantities of concrete that needs to be purchased. The cost of concrete now is much different than the cost of concrete that was on the previous requests. So I feel that they want to get clarification from TDOT to make sure that the cost that they have in the change order fits into TDOT's cost schedule.
And if we deny the change order, we just don't have drainage, proper drainage?
Yes, it's a little more complicated than that. As part of this change order, there is a new contract extension date to the end of February to wrap things up. That's needed because right now, the contract is at a standstill with TDOT because the end date is currently frozen and in limbo, so we can't request reimbursement funding from TDOT until we have an extended end date past the current date.
So it's already hit the end date.
Yes.
I hate construction.
I think it's.
I think I need to be a contractor.
Yeah, I know. Like I was thinking, when I sell somebody something, I tell them what it is up front, and that's the price we agree on, and that's what we do. When they do something, they come up with a billion other reasons to screw you later.
Yeah.
So I believe Mr. Hargis, Commissioner Hargis had a motion to defer.
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.